the Madman! Welcome to the custom Hearthstone cards of the week. So let's start with finally a good start of game effect in my opinion. And you should note that this is how you make start of game effects. They better be really minimal. Waldemar the Pure, a Paladin legendary, 2 mana 3/2. Start of game. If your deck has no neutral cards, the first time you use your hero power, it costs 1. Design, 5 stars. Balance, 5 stars. You might look at this card and be like, what, that's like nothing. And the answer is yes, that's how small of an effect start of game has to be, especially if you're just sliding a card that can generally fit into an already established playstyle. This just is a small bump to the pure Paladin deck. Means you're consistently getting a turn 1 play, even if it is just a 1/1. You would probably be surprised by how much this would increase pure Paladin's win rate if it were actually in the game. So I like the card. I think the card would be put into pure Paladin and would make the deck archetype a little bit stronger. You could probably make it your first use of the hero power cost 0, which would be surprisingly not that important because you would probably use it on turn 1. Next up, we've got Void Prison, a priest 6 mana spell. All minions go dormant for 2 turns. This is an interesting card. Design 2 stars, balance 5 stars, and I think it is a really important design lesson also. For whatever reason, in life, humans are rational. And you know what they hate seeing? Surprisingly more than their minions dying? They hate it when they actually still have minions but they can't do anything. This was proven by the freeze mechanic, which has repeatedly gotten nerfed, and everyone hates mage because used to hate mage because freeze mage would be like, oh, I can't play against them, I can't do anything, wham. Void Prison is basically a Frost Nova that lasts for 2 turns. And no, it's not 3 turns because when it's their turn, they immediately get 1 dormant tick, and then they get the second one when you pass again and they can attack on the 3rd turn, so it's not frozen for 3 turns. Easy mistake to make. I put the balance at a 5 star because I feel like the proper cost is somewhere around 5 or 6. So it's like, okay, 6 is fine, especially for such an annoying effect. I don't even think you would run it because what's better than putting your opponent's minions dormant? Just killing them? But I'm just thinking of the grief potential where you can imagine some beginning players to Hearthstone. One of the players has a bunch of minions out, they're having a good time, and then suddenly one of the players pulls out a Void Prison. And then this poor player who has 7 minions in play, he's like, oh, wow, I can't do anything. That sucks. And then, the opponent takes a turn, and then the player is like, oh my god, I can't do anything again. This game sucks. Forest Keeper. It's a druid 2 mana 1/3. Choose 1. Discover a spell that costs 4 or less, or discover a spell that costs 5 or more. I love this card. Design 5 stars, balance 5 stars. That is a great design in that it's super flexible, it fits the druid theme really well. You can really play either form of it. Draw it late game, you almost always play it for discover a spell that costs 5 or more, or maybe you really need something fast, something that costs not a lot of mana. So the discover subsect of cards you get from Forest Keeper isn't that high, but druid cards generally don't do anything that inherently unfair, such that it's probably okay for there to be 4 copies of a card that costs 5 or more. Note that this might change depending on meta, so it has to be printed at the right time. But for now, I think Forest Keeper and Druid would be fine. Next up, we have Birthday Girl. 5 mana 4/4, neutral. Battle Cry. At the start of your opponent's next turn, they discover a card from their deck to give to you. This was really close to being the trump card of the week. Design 5 stars. Balance 3 stars? 3 stars. And the balance is low, not because the card is too strong, but because it's too weak. I think it could be a 5 mana 5/5. You might say, wait, this could break apart opponent's combo decks and whatnot, and it's neutral. But I would point towards Nova² being fine. That's a 2 mana 2/3 which burned a random top card. In this case, your opponent has control over the worst card of 3 cards to gift to you. In fact, when you play this, I would say on average you're helping the opponent out because they're thinning the worst card of 3 choices from their deck. Interestingly enough, this is often a benefit to both you and the opponent. Really cool design, a tough decision that your opponent has to make, pretty interactive, a lot of things to think about there. Next, it's HighFive. Paladin spell, 1 mana, restore 8 health to both heroes. HighFive. Design balance. Radiance is a priest card that just simply heals you for 5. I think it's not that out of line to just simply have an 8 heal. It's not just an 8 heal to you though, it's an 8 heal to your opponent as well. And I think this really plays very well to the Paladin theme of equality, of fairness, of I get something good, you get something good. Everyone's gonna feel good about getting health on both sides, when in actuality, even though this is a symmetric effect, you easily cheat the symmetry by being a big control deck, which doesn't care about your opponent's health. At some amount of health, you will happily play a card that just heals you. We haven't really found that number yet. 5 wasn't enough. 8 might actually be good enough. Circle of Protection, a mage spell for 0 mana. Each time you would draw a card this turn, gain 5 armor instead. Design, 3 stars, balance, 3 stars. There are some cards in the game that look really cool, but these are the cards that usually are cool if used in combination with other cards. And while Mage does have a specialty in drawing cards and having things happen when drawing cards, and Mage also does have a minor theme in gaining armor, what Mage does not have is a theme of gaining a ridiculously large amount of armor in one turn. And while Circle of Protection could be used humbly with Arcane Intellect to be a 2-card combo for 3 mana to gain 10 armor, which would be terrible, if the card were printed, the only way it would ever see play is if it were in some degenerate combo. So the inherent problem with the design is that this is a combo card which scales infinitely, and that's not actually fun for the opponent. You feel clever, but your opponent's like, wait, I'm up against a mage, why do they have 50 armor? Balance, 3 stars because surprisingly, despite my monologue there, I actually think it's too weak. In today's meta, wouldn't be played. In fact, I can't actually think of a meta that it would be played. Some cards, like perhaps Shutterwalk, are really cool in theory, but either they're inherently mega broken and maybe inherently unfun to play against, or they're useless. Traitorous Schemer. It's a 5 mana warlock minion that's a 4/5 demon with a new mechanic, Cursed. Cursed is a mechanic which is, while this is in your hand, your hero takes 1 damage at the start of your turn. So anyways, Traitorous Schemer, 5 mana 4/5 with Cursed, Battlecry, deal 1 damage randomly split among all enemies. Upgrades each turn. Cool mechanic to pair with Cursed because Cursed incentivizes you to play a card as fast as possible. Upgrades each turn incentivizes you to hold it as long as possible. Really interesting push and pull there. Design 5 stars, balance 3 stars. Problem is, compared to Scavenging Shavara, 6 mana 6/3 deal 6 damage randomly split among all minions, Traitor Schemer looks much weaker. Shavara is really good at controlling the board, and also it only hits minions, which is really critical. As stands, I think it could just be reduced to 4 mana instead of 5 mana. It is a bad top deck, and is both a, upside and a downside. So 4 mana, 4/5 with a Battlecry, but also balanced with Cursed. Interesting Yeti. I do think that this Cursed thing can definitely be a mechanic. I like it, it's an elegant keyword. And it does play specifically with Warlock really well since they have a few cards that reward you for taking damage. There are also a few other classes that could use these, taking damage things. You could, in theory, run a Priest or a Paladin or a Druid thing with a healing theme. I think this mechanic has a lot of potential design space. Harzat, Corrupted Warlock. It's a Warlock 3 mana, 3/2. Legendary. Battlecry. Discover 2 Warlock cards. When one is played, the other is discarded. I'm going to generously not take a point off on design for the name. Design 5 stars, balance 5 stars. First thing I'm going to mention is the name is terrible. But the idea is really cool. It's basically a mega discover where you discover not 1, but 2 cards. So You basically get the best choice out of 6 almost options. And I say almost because you might get the same option twice. Also, this would be an interesting card to print if discard rewards were in theme for being in Warlock. Because maybe you discover a card that says, when discarded, have an effect. Like Hand of Gul'dan. That would be really powerful. Also has interesting implications with just hand size. Your hand will be bigger when you play 1 card that gets you 2 cards. I think it's a card that gives you a lot of different options, and I think it's priced pretty appropriately. Soriana, a priest 3-mana 3/5 legendary dragon. Taunt, dormant for 2 turns. While it sleeps, opponent's minions have -1 attack. Design 5 stars, balance 4 stars. I think it would have been pretty interesting to have some cards have an effect while they were dormant. Now, Soriana was also in a previous adventure, Kobolds and Catacombs, and it features kind of the boss mechanic from it. So that's also cool. I think she's a little bit weak as is, because we compare her to Imprisoned Homunculus, which is a 1-mana 2/5 with Taunt. The effect of the aura of opponent's minions have -1 attack, not that big a deal. So I think this can be boosted up to a 3/6 at least. Perhaps it can be even better as well. And it's time for the trump card of the week, whatever the cost. This is a Paladin 4-mana card. Destroy all minions. Discard all Paladin cards in your hand. Design 5 stars, balance 5 stars. Very interestingly, this is actually very not in flavor for Paladin, but I think it's a great idea that heavily involves a Paladin specific theme and is a good idea, a good reason on when to break rules. So Paladin right now has general theme of enjoying you running a lot of Paladin cards. That's the pure Paladin. Paladin also isn't about destroying minions. No, that's like too mean for them. But this is just so in flavor. Great art, great name, and that all evokes the imagery of Arthas raising Stratholme, a very drastic measure for a Paladin to take. And I think this would fit well in a Arthas-related set, a, March of the Undead related set, something like that. This card is also a big puzzle of where would you even run a card like this? And I think cards that make you say that question while also being really strong looking are cool. Obviously 4-mana destroy all minions is cool, and if you have very few cards in your hand, or very few Paladin cards in your hand, that's great. But the problem is, you're probably playing Control Paladin card, and the reason why you're playing Control Paladin card is to play big value Paladin cards. Or is it? Maybe you feature a Paladin deck trying to get value off of big neutral minions, and you have whatever the cost as a very powerful board control spell. Do you put it in a fast aggro deck because then you won't have a lot of cards in your hand? No, that's dumb because you don't want to destroy all minions. So it seems like the solution is some sort of control deck, but how do you build it? An interesting dilemma, and I think a very interesting card, and a great example of when it's okay to break class identity. So that's your trump cards of the week.